hey, we can support this if you do this. They come back, well, we really want to do that, and it's just kind of a give or take.
It's the best backlot that I've ever been on.
Get your hands off of my wife!
As far as I'm concerned, this is movie magic.
Over the years, Hollywood has mined a rich vein of action and adventure in military subjects. The Department of Defense provides access to equipment and personnel for many film and TV projects. The goal, present a positive public image of the armed forces and enhance recruitment. Over the course of 2007, Recon got the opportunity to visit several movie sets and sample the real military. A frigid, late January afternoon in New York City, and it's mustering in time at the National Guard Armory in Midtown Manhattan. These soldiers are members of the 69th Infantry Division, the Fighting 69th as it's been known since the Civil War. Many of them are veterans of Iraq, but tonight they'll all volunteer to appear as extras in the blockbuster movie I Am Legend starring Will Smith. It's set in New York, and they'll be acting as crowd control during a fictionalized evacuation of the city.
You're pretending to be who you are, so they want us to be soldiers. We are soldiers. So, and sometimes our normal reactions may not be exactly what they're looking for, so the director might be, you know, I know you guys would do this a little in one way, but try to do things a little bit different because it is a movie, so we have to adjust a little bit.
Well, from my end, now I can really see how all the extras come in, how they constantly cut, reset. I mean, it takes so much time, hours, just for 1 minute of the film.
All right, we'll see you in like 10 minutes.
A major movie set has some similarities to a military exercise. Among other things, it involves transporting large numbers of personnel and a lot of reset time punctuated by short bursts of activity.
Mommy, they have guns! It's okay, baby, they're in the Army like Daddy.
In this movie, a pandemic is ravaging the city, and Manhattan is being quarantined. Underneath the Brooklyn Bridge, the evacuation of the healthy is beginning.
Coming through, coming through, coming through!
Fortunately, we've never had to evacuate New York City because of virus or monsters or anything like that. But if we did, this is probably how we do it. It'd be a combined force with Navy, Coast Guard, military. And the actual troops that we're using here is the 69th Regiment of the New York Army National Guard, which would be the ones who would actually evacuate or assist in the evacuation of the city.
Get your hands off my wife! Get your hands off of my wife!
Will Smith plays an Army Lieutenant Colonel escorting his family toward the waiting Coast Guard helicopter.
They give him some problems escorting his wife off the barge because she hasn't cleared an eye retina scan or something like that.
Scan her again! Scan her again! Stand down!
She clears, he gets off the barge, she gets evacuated by chopper. At that time, there's total chaos in the city. The Brooklyn Bridge is being blown up. At that time, the crowd becomes hostile, and I say my line, return to shore, do not approach the barge, or you'll be fired on.
Of course, the guardsmen don't really fire on the crowd because they wouldn't in a real crisis. But the presence of the soldiers and military equipment gives the filmmakers something they desperately want in this science fiction film.
We're trying to be very authentic when it comes to evacuation procedures and the participation of military personnel and how the actions of the armed forces would be part of sort of the attempt to quarantine and preserve a city in this moment of crisis. And although we've taken some liberties, having real military personnel allows us a truthful feeling.
When you get the personnel and they've gone through military training and, you know, they know the gear and they know the uniforms and, you know, there's just an air of realism and naturalism that comes with working with the real people.
In most cases, this is what it would be like to a point. You know, it would be a little bit more chaotic, you know, but it's fun doing it. It's a good experience. And in a way, it's just like training.
The Fighting 69th has just been unbelievable. Their troops add a sense of professionalism to this project that we would never, ever be able to get with extras.
We are the real deal. A whole bunch of group of guys here. Yeah, we're the real deal. United States Army.
And the Pentagon seems to be getting what it wants when it agrees to support an entertainment project like I Am Legend.
Well, it's basically a recruiting effort. Most people find out about the military services that they join later on through seeing them on television or on a movie. But not everybody has the luxury of seeing the Coast Guard live near the coast. They don't live near the coast. They're not going to see the Coast Guard in action themselves, but they will see it on film or on the screen.
We had a young man, a soldier here with the 69th. His time was up in the National Guard, and he was scheduled to get out. When he found out that we were hiring extras, that the production company wanted to hire actual soldiers as extras, he re-enlisted.
Producers have been borrowing a few good service members and top-of-the-line equipment and materiel since the silent film days. Although the 1927 Oscar winner Wings wasn't the first film to get military support, it set the gold standard for movies that followed. The movie's crew pretty much had the run of Army Air Corps facilities near San Antonio, Texas for 9 months, crews and planes.
Saddle up! Saddle up!
2 decades later, most of the John Wayne classic Sands of Iwo Jima was shot on Camp Pendleton, California, using real Marines as extras. It also established Wayne as the movie's typical American military hero, tough but good-hearted, fighting bravely in a noble cause. Through World War II and on into the mid-1960s, dozens of movies with military themes got official support. All that changed in the Vietnam era when Wayne's The Green Berets was the first, and for many years the only Hollywood film to portray what became an increasingly unpopular war.
All real Americans love the sting of battle.
Patton, released in 1970, was one of the few war films during the Vietnam years that both got strong DoD support and was widely successful with audiences. George C. Scott's rousing portrayal of General George Patton won an Oscar, but the military support was limited, mainly because there wasn't much World War II-era equipment left in circulation by the time Patton went into production. The first Vietnam films released after the war, like Apocalypse Now, were made without DoD support. Most were critical of the war and sometimes critical of the military as well. Attitudes began to change in the mid-1980s. That was reflected in Top Gun, about the Navy's school for elite fighter pilots. Starring Tom Cruise as a self-centered but talented pilot who learned the value of real teamwork, Top Gun became in some ways a highly successful Technicolor recruiting ad. It also projected a positive view of the military life for the first time in nearly 2 decades of American movies. That began a period that continues to the present, with the Department of Defense and individual services supporting many more projects and being more flexible about what projects they will support. Some, like We Were Soldiers, extol heroism like World War II movies. Others, like Black Hawk Down, portray desperate effort with a negative outcome. The summer 2007 blockbuster Transformers is science fiction. So is I Am Legend, which premiered at the end of the year. Iron Man, based on a comic book, is scheduled to hit theaters in May of 2008. There are certain ground rules that must be followed to get DoD support. Military personnel must be depicted accurately and realistically. Military actions in fictional situations must be carried out in a manner that reflects current practices and doctrine. Producers must submit a script to the individual service that would be involved, and to the Central Defense Department Entertainment Liaison Office at the Pentagon.
I'll read it. If it's a feature film or television, it comes to me and I read it. If it's something that looks like we can support, then I'll make my recommendations on it and send it to the Pentagon. And if we all come to an agreement, then we'll go to the production company and start hammering out an agreement.
It's a process. We provide notes to them. Hey, we can support this if you do this. They come back, well, we really want to do that. And it's just kind of a give or take.
Even if they want our support and want that accuracy which they come to us for, We have to understand that it is entertainment.
Once there's agreement on the script, a project officer is assigned and stays with the production throughout shooting.
In Hollywood, everything is based on relationships, so it's really important that we build a trust with the people that we're working with on entertainment productions, which is why a project officer is assigned for each project, and they stay with that project their entire tenure in the office.
Some argue the script approval process is a form of censorship, a charge Vince Ogilvy vehemently denies.
We cannot stop a movie from being made. If you want to get your movie made, you can get that movie made with or without us.
Allowance is often made for the fact that a movie is a fiction, a made-up story, and that filmmakers have personal visions of how their story should be told.
I felt like the Pentagon was very forgiving when it came to understanding that there were certain leaps you have to make in science fiction. And so the combination was great.
DoD will support projects that convey the military in a realistic light. It doesn't all have to be roses and bunnies, but it has to be realistic.
Cut. Cut.
Come in. General, I'd like to talk to you about this mission upon which we're about to embark. It seems a bit ridiculous, doesn't it?
Have you met General Ryan?
Hello, Colonel. The General Ryan, Chief of Staff?
That's right.
Shouldn't there have been a memo or something?
A real Air Force Chief of Staff showing up on a sci-fi TV show, playing himself?
The General Ryan.
It's a bit unexpected. But in 2001, there was then Chief of Staff General Michael Ryan in a cameo role on an episode of Stargate SG-1. By that point, the Air Force and the program had an unusually close relationship. Stargate SG-1 was on the air from 1997 to 2007, first on Showtime, then on the Sci-Fi Channel.
Our Stargate's relationship with the Air Force really began in Season 1 during the filming of the pilot, when we went through the regular channels to ask for stock footage, and they said, well, if any Air Force personnel or locations are going to appear in the film, we need to vet the script, we need to look at it. And we basically at that point asked the question, well, would you mind reading it for authenticity?
We've been so lucky that the Air Force has been so supportive of the show from word one, that we've always had advisors who have come to set and visited, and who've sent notes down whenever we've shot something, and they've gone, no, they wouldn't do this.
We've been involved with the show for so long. There's an inherent relationship. It's almost as if our office is part of the family. But there's still that line that we keep, that professionalism between us and the show, and that the show keeps between themselves and with us.
In this science fictional world, Stargates allow near instantaneous interstellar travel. They were put in place by ancient aliens. It's produced mostly in Vancouver, British Columbia. Over its 11-year run, it became an international cult favorite and spawned several spin-offs. An animated version ran for 1 year, Stargate Atlantis for 4 years, and 2 direct-to-DVD feature films will be released in 2008. Stargate SG-1 portrays an Air Force team that travels throughout the galaxy to find and defend the Earth against potential enemies. Amanda Tapping's character, Samantha Carter, has advanced from captain to lieutenant colonel over the seasons.
Apparently I've had an impact on recruiting. I've met countless men, and mostly women, who have come up to me and said that they joined the Air Force because of my character.
Therefore, if we assume the existence of 10 dimensions in space-time, the variables are canceled out and the calculations suddenly begin to make sense.
Excuse me, ma'am.
In 2001, the brand new Air Force logo made its public debut on a lectern when Colonel Carter went to the Air Force Academy as a guest instructor.
There's a sense of responsibility. You don't want to mess this up. You don't want to do it in a way that's not honest and not true to the way these people are living their lives.
Our FA-22s and ABLs are all in the air. By the way, a second Air Force Chief of Staff showed up on Stargate SG-1, In 2003, General John Jumper appeared in a scene with fictional President William Devane as an alien invasion was imminent.
Sir, 30-plus ships just appeared in orbit, taking station around the planet.
We built an Oval Office set, and my favorite comment from General Jumper was, yeah, this is pretty much like the real one. I thought that was cool.
In the heart of Hollywood, producer Don Belisario has been turning out hit TV series since the 1970s, including JAG, the longest-running military-themed TV series ever. His current show, NCIS. He's a Marine veteran who understands what real military locations and personnel can bring to a production.
I like to try to use actual military personnel because I don't have to go around and say, no, you don't salute like this.
He knows military support can bring realism.
We have had times where they've said to me, you know, this isn't the procedure we'd follow. You know, it would be more this kind of a procedure. And I'd say, well, okay, that doesn't affect my story. I can change that.
And sometimes he chooses to go it alone. On one episode of JAG, he wrote a script centered around losing a nuclear torpedo during an exercise.
So in that case, they said, well, we just can't help you on this one, Don. And I understood, you know, and they understood. I said, well, all the drama goes out of the story if I don't suddenly show up there's a missing nuke.
The hit series 24 makes frequent requests for Department of Defense support. Because preparation and shooting time are much more accelerated in TV production than in feature films, requests often are made on relatively short notice, sometimes as little as 3 weeks.
It has been an interesting dance where I think we have a lot of military and Defense Department people who are fans of the show. That has always helped.
In 24, each season unfolds the events of a single day, and each episode is an hour of that day. In Season 6, writers had the idea that terrorists would take over a U.S. submarine.
The bad guys had acquired access to a U.S. nuclear sub and were going to turn its missiles on the U.S. population.
3 minutes to launch.
Series star Kiefer Sutherland plays counter-terrorist agent Jack Bauer, who eventually foils the plan, but barely. Producers approached the Navy about 2 months before the episode was scheduled to be shot, requesting access to a real submarine.
When I first called up and said, we have this story where the bad guys take over a Navy sub. Would you guys be at all interested? I don't know, let us find out. You know, and then it evolved into something else where it wasn't a Navy sub, it was a Russian sub in a Navy port. The action was still the same, but it took the onus off of the Navy, and they were able to give us the support.
The scene was shot aboard the USS Topeka while docked in San Diego.
When we're down there shooting in the torpedo room, there's no way to duplicate that, having been there. You know, nothing's tight enough, nothing's jammed, got enough equipment jammed into it. You'd never build a set that way.
It makes it bigger, it makes it more interesting, it makes it more real, and it validates what is a huge part of our show, which is that the stakes are high.
Camera. The Air Force PA office asked us to participate with a couple airplanes for the filming of Stargate after we were involved with an episode in 24. We're always willing to put our airplanes out on TV or any kind of media for recruiting purposes.
On the tarmac in Vancouver, British Columbia, 2 Oregon Air National Guard F-15s to be featured in one of the Stargate feature films.
They're part of the storyline for Stargate Continuum, which the Air Force has generously come up to allow us to sit in the seat.
The Air Force gave Ben Browder, Lieutenant Colonel Cameron Mitchell in the series, a chance to do more than just sit in a fighter jet. He got invited to take a ride in an F-16 owned by the Air Force's demonstration team, the Thunderbirds.
I got to go up with Major Scotty Zamzow, the lead soloist for the Thunderbirds, and he basically showed me everything that he knew how to do in an F-16.
He says the experience helped him act the part of a pilot.
You know, went supersonic, not that interesting. Pulled 9Gs, very interesting. It's a rocket ship. It's amazing. It's the most amazing experience that I've ever had.
Fantastic. Oh man, you're the one. You're the one. This
No,
guy.
you know, I just rode around and said, "Give me more, sir. Give me more."
Basically do a quick battle damage check.
Back on his day job in Vancouver, Browder is preparing to pretend to be a pilot.
What happens in the storyline is that members of Stargate SG-1 have to make their way to Antarctica, and we need to get there quickly. Luckily, we have 2 members of their team who are pilots.
That trip leads to a rendezvous with a nuclear submarine on the polar ice. First time the Stargate franchise worked with the Navy. The scenes were actually shot in the Arctic.
I don't think anybody's ever shot scenes with a submarine coming through the ice. In reality, it's all done in CG. We really have the submarine there, and we really are shooting aboard the submarine. It adds so much production value.
In my many years of service, I've met with our men and women in uniform around the world.
Stargate Continuum and Stargate The Ark of Truth are scheduled to be released directly on DVD in 2008. Captain Mary Danner thinks the Stargate franchise has enhanced the image of the Air Force for years.
Because it has such a huge built-in worldwide franchise, it's a great opportunity for the Air Force to get their messages out there from a recruiting standpoint to a very large audience. And we get a lot of people who say they joined the Air Force because of this show.
You're right about that.
This movie is going to be fantastic. The Air Force is going to come off looking like literally rock stars in this film. It's just been a great relationship.
The producers of the superhero movie Iron Man picked Edwards Air Force Base in the California desert for one of their primary locations.
It's the best backlot that I've ever been on. You shoot in the backlots of Hollywood, and you look in one direction and you see a Western street. You look in the other direction, you see, you know, a New York street. Here you look every direction and it's authentic. You have the desert, you have the Muroc Dry Lake bed, you have all the hangars, and then of course you have all the personnel that instinctively know exactly what to do because they really do this for a living. So it's not just hired extras.
If you guys want accuracy, we'd all have on
clip-on.
As the crew prepares to film a scene inside a hangar, bogus military IDs are handed out to active duty personnel who are appearing as extras. The authenticity only goes so far.
This is my fake identification card. Apparently I'm female. This is David Owens.
Not really.
Or at least she used to be.
Movie pros say these extras perform well once they get used to the camera.
You know, the first two, you know, they all like to kind of look and, you know, make sure they're right in front of the lens, you know, and kind of get that quick glance cameo, but they're doing a real good job, you know, keeping a straight face and going along with, you know, the pattern.
To peace. Iron Man originated as a Marvel comic book back in the 1960s. The 2008 movie version updates the story to the present day. Iron Man is Tony Stark, played by Robert Downey Jr. Stark is a billionaire, a bit of a playboy, and a brilliant inventor of high-tech weaponry. Terrence Howard is Lieutenant Colonel James Rhodes, Stark's best friend, and an Air Force weapons acquisition officer. In the movie, Stark is kidnapped by terrorists and ordered to design a superweapon. Instead, he creates the first Iron Man suit and escapes.
When you're doing a fantasy story like a comic book movie, you want to add as much reality as you can to ground the film so that it doesn't just seem like an ungrounded, silly story. In this case, we wanted to set Iron Man in the real world, facing real enemies and real problems and dealing with real technology.
There's plenty of real technology at Edwards, including a Global Hawk and an F-22 Raptor brought in as set dressing for this day's scene.
I'm a Raptor guy, and I got to go down and find him a Raptor to bring and put in the hangar. That's probably one of the coolest things I can think of right now is we get to showcase the world's premier fighter aircraft in the movie Iron Man.
Ought to be fun, but Captain Christian Hodge, Air Force project officer on the movie, says he's never had a tougher job.
I deal with the very top tiers of Air Force leadership and often other services. I've never been more stressed out or gotten less sleep. There's a lot of scrutiny, you know, making sure, hey, this is something that we can do, mission allowing. There's often an exchange of funds between the production and the Air Force or DoD, and that's got to be done right and detailed and taken care of, and cross the T's and dot the I's. So it's been kind of stressful.
Agreement on a script is the starting point for military support, but producers must also pick up the tab for the cost of operating the military equipment they use.
This is obviously a private enterprise, but this is at no cost to you, the taxpayer, at all. Everything here is paid for by the production company. The soldiers who are here, they're on their own time. They're paid as extras. The helicopter is a Coast Guard helicopter, and every hour of blade time is reimbursed by the production company.
We have a standard rate that we use, just like the Department of Defense military services. The Coast Guard has an hourly rate that we use for all of the assets, and we provided that information at the very beginning of our meetings with the production company.
Common sense also comes into play. Clearly, with an aircraft carrier with 5,000 individuals and millions of dollars of equipment, we have to tie that to a training mission.
And the entertainment office can't make a command participate.
We don't task them to provide the support. It's who is available and the location that they're filming that we can incorporate into the movie.
You make our nation stronger.
It's a matter of pride for those who participate in the production of the movie.
Somewhere near the end of closing credits, after the hairdressers, the drivers, the stunt doubles, you'll find on-screen recognition for the Department of Defense and participating military units. The credit may be buried, but the relationship between the motion picture industry and the Pentagon is thriving. That relationship will continue to be nurtured as long as the real military is seen as enhancing the public image of life in uniform and helping attract recruits. I'm Tech Sergeant Ryan Hoke. Thank you for watching Recon.